Okay, good morning again. Before we turn it over to Holly for today's presentation, I'd like to call on Phil Mintz, who is the Executive Director of Industry Expansion Solutions, for a quick overview of a new program. Phil?
Hello, thanks, Susan. Good morning, everyone. It's glad to see everybody on the webinar. And before I turn it over to Holly, who's all things safety and OSHA, to wow everybody, I just want to make sure we saw on our list there was many of you that work in manufacturing in North Carolina. And we always, as an extension operation of the university, we're looking out for opportunities for our manufacturers and others. And so we wanted to share an opportunity that may be important to your organization if you're manufacturing. We have a grant that's geared to help our manufacturers embrace technology, smart manufacturing technology. And again, you might want to fixate on a QR code and get a copy of that to share with those in your manufacturing organization that would want to explore this. But we have a grant that will allow us to share some of the Department of Energy's resources to support your growth in technology. Again, we want to help with productivity. We want to help you use some of the latest of the smart manufacturing technology. So we have a website that you can visit, our Smarter NC website. And if you Google Smarter NC in North Carolina, it will probably come up. But again, we would love for you to, there we go. We did that already. We clicked on the link and now we have the opportunity for you to see what you will get more details about the program. But again, if you're manufacturing North Carolina and you're not too extremely big, we do cater to smaller manufacturers who don't have resources. So fill out an application. We'll come by and visit to you and talk to you about what some of your plans are for investing in technology. And again, we're happy to help. And again, we want to use these funds to help our North Carolina manufacturers. So I'll get out of the way and let Holly take it over, and so you can hear what you came on to here for. But get that QR code and find out about Smarter NC, and we'll be seeing you soon. Thank you. Holly?
Thank you, Phil. That's fantastic information. And for everyone's convenience, we did drop those URLs in the chat window to both the NC Smarter or Smarter NC website, as well as that application. Additionally, you will be getting a copy of the slides. I guess Susan sends those out post webinar, and they will also have these QR codes and these URLs on them. So no worries if you didn't grab those or weren't prepared to. Good morning, everybody. Fantastic to see you this morning. And just by means of introduction, my name is Holly Singleton, and I do work for North Carolina State University and the Industry Expansion Solutions Group. And I am a part of the Southeastern OSHA Training Institute Education Center. So we just call ourselves Southeastern for short. So Southeastern is a piece of the IES group of services. And this morning, Susan had asked me to provide some information related to, like, what if the OSHA inspector shows up? And I know that's a fear that a lot of people kind of keep in the back of their minds. And what we want to convey this morning is that there's some pretty basic stuff you can be doing and be aware of that helps remove that fear. So the title of the program is OSHA's Here, Now What? And how to ensure that if the OSHA compliance officer shows up at your door, it's not a scary situation. So we're going to get started by asking you to drop in the chat kind of who you are using the letter A, B, or C. A, if you're a full-time safety professional. B, if safety has kind of been handed to you on top of everything else that you do. And then C, you don't really have a formal connection to safety responsibilities. So let's see what people are putting in chat and see who's here. Oh, we got a lot of full-time safety professionals. And my B group, that's a hard spot to be in. And only have a couple of C's, a couple of folks saying, yeah, this is not what I do. B group. I wish I could make your life easier. But I do want to acknowledge that if you are one of those people that at some point in your career, you have a full-time job and then there's a knock at your door saying, oh, by the way, we need somebody to be responsible for safety, and that's going to be you. That can be a really challenging assignment. So I want to extend to especially my group of folks that find themselves in that category. If you need to reach out to us for any, guidance and questions, we are here and we will be glad to assist however we can. And we do have, by the way, a whole lot of training that's available on classes that you can take if you're in a situation where you need to build that foundation of safety. But yeah, we have got a lot of safety professionals in here. We've got a lot of people who are responsible for safety, even maybe on top of other stuff. And then we have folks that don't really have safety responsibilities, but have the desire to understand more, understand better. Here's my request, especially from that group of folks who entered the letter A. As we are talking and chatting this morning, involve yourselves. If you have things that you want to drop into the chat, whether it's comments on something being discussed, suggestions, if someone asks a question or if we address something and you're like, ooh, I've got some insight on that. Let's use this opportunity as an exchange and not just me sitting here talking at you this morning. So let's get, okay, I have a question in chat that I think we do need to answer. It says chat is only going to host and panelist, and that is a very good point. Amanda, thank you for pointing that out. We do have a team of host and panelists. So if you put a question or a comment in there, they will be working to help me keep up. So if there are things that I need to address or ideas that you put into chat that need to be shared, we've got a fantastic team of people kind of keeping an eye on that. So I want to thank them in advance for being here and helping with that. All right, let's get this train moving forward. We got 4 things that we essentially want to tackle this morning. They're on the PowerPoint slide currently, and we're going to be kind of methodically working our way through these 4 objectives, if you will. So when we get finished, hopefully you will have a pretty solid understanding of what to expect if OSHA were to show up at your facility. Number 2, having some clarity on what the most common violations tend to be is a real good way to have, I guess, kind of a starting point. Because if I know what typically the issues being identified are, then I can take that information and evaluate my workplace, my situation, and go, okay, can I address these most common things as a starting point? Number 3, just how to be prepared. Some very basic things you can be doing to feel a little more solid. So should OSHA show up, you're ready to roll. The other thing I want to say about number 3 is being prepared. Yes, today's webinar is about being prepared for OSHA, but being prepared is also about the recognition that if I am prepared for OSHA, then really what I'm prepared for is to protect my workers. And that's the bottom line, absolute, ultimate goal here is how do we keep our workers safe? And so that preparedness piece, yes, it's about an OSHA compliance visit, but it's ultimately about, am I doing the things I need to be doing to protect my workers? And then number 4, we're going to be kind of addressing number 4 throughout. So as we talk about 1, 2, and 3, you're going to be seeing some resources and seeing some best practices. And at the end of this webinar, if you don't capture all of the resources and the websites and the, all the stuff that I'm going to be dealing with, you'll get the PowerPoint slides, so you will have access to all the websites that we visit, all of the QR codes that you may not be able to grab during the webinar. So don't worry about, oh, I didn't get that. You'll get it ultimately at the end of this webinar. Whoopsie. All right, number one, what to expect? Oh, what to expect? Well, first of all, when an OSHA compliance visit is made, it is very random. I mean, very unlikely that it's going to be random. It's almost always anchored in one of the 6 reasons that's on the PowerPoint slide. So they don't just, pick a number and go, ooh, I got a hair in my mouth. They don't just pick a number out of a basket and go, oops, we're going to go to this address today. There's a reason behind why they show up at a particular workplace. So the 6 things: imminent danger. Somehow, somewhere, they've been made aware of something going on within a particular workplace that puts employees in immediate danger. And this would be something that would be likely to cause serious injury or even death. Now, one of the questions that I would ask is, well, how do they know? How do they know I'm exposing my workers to something that's imminently dangerous? And there's a variety of ways. A particular case that I'm familiar with, I find kind of entertaining. There was a company, and by the way, I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, and this company was located in Greensboro, North Carolina. And there was a company here that did a local commercial. And so it was on local stations, and you would see this company advertising the services they offered. And in that commercial, there was video of them performing the job. And I'll just go ahead and lay it out there. This was a roofing company, and the video included roofers, and there was no fall protection. Well, they put that on local television. Well, compliance officers work across the entirety of the state, and they watch TV. So compliance officers with North Carolina Department of Labor see that commercial and go, oh my goodness, because having workers at that height without fall protection is clearly an imminently dangerous situation. So they did indeed conduct an inspection related to that company and specifically related to fall protection. So that's one example of how OSHA might become aware of an imminently dangerous situation in a company. All right, fatalities, severe injury reports, and catastrophes. Of course, anytime there is a fatality, OSHA is notified. Anytime there's a severe injury as defined in the OSHA standard, they are also notified. And by the way, if you're not aware, your company is responsible for notifying OSHA of fatalities and severe injuries. And then a catastrophe is a situation where a single event resulted in the hospitalization of 3 or more workers. So it doesn't really matter how serious the injury is if they are hospitalized as a result of an event in the workplace. Then again, OSHA may show up and do an inspection. All right, you're familiar with complaints. Complaints can be filed and concerns can be shared with OSHA, and a complaint might lead to an inspection. A referral, for those of you that aren't used to some of this terminology with OSHA, a referral means that another agency that was in your facility made note of something related to worker safety that could very well be outside of their purview, but they noticed it and they contact OSHA and say, we had a little concern. We were at this particular facility and just wanted to make you aware of what we observed. I can give you an example of that actually happened with a facility that I worked in. There was a large laundry facility as part of our operation, and huge industrial sized dryers, like think clothes dryer, but on a mega scale. And a worker needed to crawl into the drum of the dryer to do a repair. And the dryer drum that he crawled into was still quite warm. So he got into the drum and he passed out from exposure to the heat, and 911 was called. Well, when the fire department arrived, the gentleman was fine. He was not, in any way injured, did not have to receive any type of treatment. But the responding fire station was concerned because they were like, he should not have gotten in there with it being that warm. So they notified OSHA and said, we just responded, have some concerns that maybe their confined space entry program is not what it needs to be or isn't being implemented the way it should be. So that's an example of a referral. Targeted enforcement programs, put that one on hold for just a second. I'm going to share some more information with you. And then the last one on the list is follow-up inspections. And that simply means that OSHA has been to this facility already and some improvements were needed. And so OSHA is coming back to ensure that those, the word that OSHA uses, abatement, that those citations that were issued have been adequately abated and there's been improvement. So let's go back to targeted enforcement programs, because that's the one that begs a little bit of question. So an example of a targeted inspection might fall under what OSHA refers to as their national emphasis programs. And these are programs where OSHA takes a look at kind of what's happening in companies. What are we seeing on the 300 logs? Where are our concerns about how workers are being exposed to hazards? And as a result of that data, OSHA kind of identifies, here are some problem areas that we really want to target. We want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on these areas. So on your screen, you'll see 4 examples from the current National Emphasis Program list. I'll also show you, because when you get these slides, I want you to be able to find the information that you need. So at the bottom of the screen here, there's a QR code. This right here beside the QR code, that's where it takes you. So if you're not a QR code user, just grab that URL. And what you'll find is on OSHA's website, these are the current national emphasis programs. And so you can see the hyperlinks, and I'll just click on heat because I looked at it most recently. So if you click on one of the national emphasis programs that you're interested in, I've chosen heat, then you can actually look at the national emphasis program as it's written. I'm going to scroll all the way to the top. Heat, as you might know, has been a little bit of a hot topic, if you will, for OSHA. So while there isn't an official OSHA standard on heat exposure, there is an emphasis program. And so what you'll find in this PDF is pretty much if OSHA were to show up and do an inspection and they decide that yes, the heat emphasis program, applies to this particular facility, these are the directions that have been given to compliance officers. I'm going to scroll a little bit faster. Have been given to compliance officers, and they're being told, here's how to conduct a heat-related compliance inspection. So I'm going to scroll down, and you can see these are the procedures. So again, you will have access to this. So under the procedures, it will say that the compliance officer shall open or refer a heat inspection for any hazardous heat conditions observed, anything that might be recorded in the 300 logs, or if an employee brings to their attention that there's a heat exposure concern. Right. Now, look at this next paragraph. Additionally, and now COSHO, the CSHO stands for Compliance, Safety, and Health Officer. That's the abbreviation for what you and I might call an inspector or a compliance officer. They also say that if during the inspection they are there on a heat priority day, they are to launch a heat inspection. And a heat priority day is when the heat index is 80 degrees or higher. So Any of these national emphasis programs are going to have a document like this that tells you here's when this emphasis program will be employed. Let me go back here. Again, there's others. You can click on anything that you might be interested in. Another example of a targeted inspection would be an inspection that falls under the local emphasis program. Oopsie, I skipped right over that. The local emphasis program. And what I have on the screen is a list of some of the local emphasis programs that are in place currently for the Atlanta region. Now, the Atlanta region is where North Carolina resides, but be mindful if you're not in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, or Florida, then you would be in a different region. So North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida make up the Atlanta region of the federal OSHA program. And I will go ahead and go here so you can also see the other regions. So on the screen was the Atlanta region, but if you are somewhere else, you can go to this URL. You can find the local emphasis programs for your particular region. Any questions popping up in chat? Anybody have, put those back up, any, because there's some manufacturing stuff here. How often does OSHA inspect anonymous complaints? That's a fantastic question, James. And I don't know, a real firm answer on that. What I can tell you is they don't investigate every complaint. So in my career, and I'm going to invite people to put in chat, put in chat the letter Y, and panelists, we can take a look at this. Put the letter Y if you have ever had a complaint investigation at one of your facilities. So I have, and they're coming in. My complaint, we got lots. We got lots of people saying, yes, 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 I've had complaints. Wow, lots. I would say at this point, there's more than 20. When someone files a complaint with OSHA and they say, I've got a concern, I don't think my company is adequately protecting workers from, whatever the hazard might be. Thank you for your chat responses. That's very helpful. OSHA will review the complaint and determine, just kind of from how the complaint reads, if they feel like, okay, yes, this is a complaint that falls under our jurisdiction, and yes, we agree it's concerning. So if they kind of go with those answers, they still may not show up on your doorstep. I've had two different approaches to complaint investigations. Approach number one, I get a letter in the mail that says, hey, we received a complaint. Here's what the complaint is about. Can you respond and tell us, a little bit about what's going on? Now, it's much more formal than that, but it's in a letter format, and it gives you a due date of when you must respond. The other way that OSHA might investigate a complaint, and by the way, that's called a desk investigation. They don't show up on your doorstep. But the other way is they do show up on your doorstep, and they arrive and say, we've received a complaint. We want to spend a little time and take a look at what's going on so we can determine if there's cause for concern and maybe cause for citation. So I wish I could tell you, oh, here's how often they do complaint investigations, but I really don't know what percent of filed complaints end up being investigated. And I don't know of those investigations, which ones are resolved just as a desk investigation versus which ones involve a compliance officer showing up. But yeah, those are the two different approaches. Whoopsie, goodness gracious, I get click happy, don't I? All right, so one last example of a targeted inspection. This one's a little confusing to people, and also a little like, weird. So essentially, a good number of companies, not all, but a good number of companies are required to submit their 300A, which is your annual summary based off your 300 log. So they submit the 300A annual summary electronically to OSHA every year. And this program is based on that data. So you're going to upload your annual summary, and you'll see that for non-construction companies that have 20 or more employees, they're going to consider these 4 factors. Do they have a high injury and illness rate? Currently, it's based on the 2023 data. Do they have upward trending rates or twice the rate for the 2022 private sector average? Number 3, are they suspiciously below industry average? So in other words, if you are submitting your 300A and you had 0 entries on your log for that year, but the industry average for your industry might be, a rate of 2. I'm just making this up, by the way. They might go, well, that's weird that you would have 0 when everybody else in your industry type is having 2 or 3 or 4 as their rate. It raises eyebrows that maybe you're not submitting accurate information. So that number 3 one is a little tricky. And then number 4, if you were supposed to upload your 300A and you didn't, then that might result in an inspection. And again, you've got the QR code and the URL there. All right, so what are the chances? We now know what triggers an inspection, what might result in OSHA showing up on your doorstep, but what are the chances? And I'm here to tell you the chances are pretty low. So let's look at some data and some numbers here. Federal. So on a federal level, 8 million workplaces are covered by federal OSHA. And in fiscal year 2024, federal OSHA conducted 34,625 inspections. If you do that math, then what you're looking at is 0.43% of workplaces in America were inspected. That's pretty low. Now, let's now zero in on, okay, what about the state of North Carolina? All right. It's not that different. 380,000 workplaces, 1,675 inspections last fiscal year, 0.44%. So the chances of OSHA knocking on your door are pretty slim, but your safety program should be based on the people you protect and not the odds of being inspected. And Amanda is asking, does that include desktop inspections and in person? And Amanda, that's a fantastic question, because the data from OSHA's website and the North Carolina Department of Labor's annual report does not specify. It just simply says inspections. So I'm afraid the answer to your question is a big fat I'm not sure. And I don't want to speculate on that. So fantastic question, but I don't know if that includes desk inspections or not. Regardless, chances are pretty low of any type of inspection. And what I want you to embrace is, let's not do safety because we're afraid of an inspection. And low likelihood does not mean low importance. So yeah, let's not put too much stock in those odds. All right, so let's suppose they do show up. So they have arrived regardless of the reason. They're now here. What are we going to do about it? Well, the standard, the 29 CFR 1903, literally specifies here's the structure of an on-site inspection. And the 1903, the title of it is Inspection, Citations, and Penalties, I believe is the full title. And it's typically not included if you've got a hard copy of the 1910. It's typically not included So, wait, I'm pausing because I do have a version that includes it. So it may very well be included in the hard copy. It's not accessible on OSHA.gov as one of the standards that they post there, but it is accessible online. And that's where this QR code takes you here. So if you are interested in learning more, digging deeper, what is it that's going to happen with an inspection, take a look at the entirety of the standard. We're going to look at a couple of details from it in just a second. What I want to do now is just spend about 3 minutes on a quick video. This video was produced by OSHA, and it walks you through these 4 steps and probably does it a lot quicker and a lot more effectively than I would talk you through them. So we're going to take a look at about half this video. So I'm going to stop it before it's finished, just to give you a sense of what's going to happen if a compliance officer shows up.
OSHA's mission is to ensure the health and safety of America's workers. Enforcement plays an important role in the agency's efforts to reduce workplace injuries, illnesses, and fatalities. This video describes the general OSHA inspection process and the reasons for an inspection. OSHA conducts inspections based on imminent danger situations, worker fatalities, hospitalizations, amputations, or losses of an eye, worker complaints, referrals, targeted inspections aimed at specific high-hazard industries or individual workplaces, and follow-up inspections. Compliance safety and health officers, or compliance officers, are experienced, well-trained industrial hygienists and safety professionals. Once the compliance officer arrives on site and enters the facility, the inspection begins with the presentation of credentials. There are 3 basic parts to any OSHA inspection: the opening conference, the walk-around, and the closing conference. At the opening conference, the compliance officer will explain why OSHA is inspecting the workplace and describe the scope of the inspection, walk-around procedures, worker representation, and the need for worker interviews. The employer is asked to select a representative to accompany the compliance officer throughout the inspection. During the walk-around, the compliance officer will consult privately with individual workers. Common questions may include: how long have you worked for the company? Have you or anyone else been injured or had close calls on the job? Does the employer provide personal protective equipment? How often does the employer provide training, and what is the training composed of? Is there anything you would change to make working conditions safer? After the walk-around, the compliance officer holds a closing conference with the employer and designated representatives to discuss the findings, possible corrective procedures, and reasonable timelines for correction. The compliance officer also discusses potential courses of action an employer may take following an inspection, as well as available consultation services. Following the OSHA inspection, the compliance officer will put together a report based on what was discussed or apparent violations. The information is sent to the area director, who determines whether or not a citation is issued. If a citation is issued, the employer has 15 days to take action, such as requesting an informal conference with the area director to discuss any issues and address the penalties, or contesting the citation. A safe workplace benefits everyone. OSHA uses both enforcement and compliance assistance to achieve this shared goal.
So that's just a really good, quick kind of description of what happens. And again, it starts with telling you why they're there. And it's going to be anchored in one of those reasons that we were just talking about. All right, let's look now at some of what's in the standard. So the standard is all about inspection, citations, and penalties. And it begins with not only a description of here are the steps, but it also has some other stuff in it. So in paragraph 3, it's a statement saying OSHA has the authority to come into any business that falls under its jurisdiction and to conduct these investigations. Paragraph 4 gives you permission to refuse. And it says, yes, you can refuse to allow the compliance officer to come into your facility and conduct the investigation. I would say just because you can doesn't mean you should, because it really does trigger kind of a different level of eventual investigation. What the compliance officer will do, and this is outlined in the standard in paragraph 4 if you wanted to read it for yourself. It essentially says the compliance officer is going to ask you a couple of questions, try to figure out why you're refusing to allow them to come into the facility, and that they will then contact their area office, and the compulsory process may be utilized, and I would say likely will be utilized. The compulsory process is just OSHA speak for they're going to get a warrant to come back. And so once they have a warrant, if you refuse entry, now it's, they have reason to arrest you. So probably not a good idea to refuse, and you're not going to benefit a whole lot. A lot of times people think that by refusing, they can buy some time and they can get some things cleaned up. But as Bob has put in the chat, he said, he's talked with compliance officers who say, essentially, they don't like it when you refuse. They will be back, this time with a warrant. And, they may dig a little deeper, look a little harder when they come back. So just be cautious. Just because you can do it, I don't advise that you do it. Paragraph 5. Letting them in, giving them coffee and donuts won't gain you any favors. And that's what paragraph 5 says, that yes, be nice to them, but there's not going to be any benefit offered to you based on the fact that you've been particularly receptive to them. Paragraph 6. Advance notice is unlikely. Now, there are some things in paragraph 6 that will say, here's where advance notice may be given. And there are some circumstances where you may know before they show up that they are coming. Those are pretty rare. And it goes on to say, if you receive advance notice and it's not authorized advance notice, there are penalties that would be given to whoever it was that gave you a heads up. Paragraph 7 says that every effort will be made. Every effort will be made to spell unreasonable correctly, because there are 2 U's and unreasonable on the screen. But every effort will be made to avoid disrupting your process. So whatever your business process is, OSHA, the compliance officer, is going to try to work within what works for you. So they're not there to turn your world upside down, and that's what paragraph 7 includes. Paragraph 9 says if you have trade secrets, they will be protected, and there's a lot of information in paragraph 9 related to that. All right, let's look now at some common violations, because I do believe that if we have some sense of the most likely things being found, that gives us a little head start on correcting those things in our own facilities. So top 10 citations in fiscal year 2024 are on the screen. You will see if you look across them, these are across the board. So number 1, fall protection, and then it references 1926. That's a construction specific standard. So this would not apply. It's not a standard that would apply to general industry, though there are requirements for fall protection in general industry. This number 1 violation is specific to construction. But you'll see number 2, HAZCOM, number 3, lockout tagout. You see several of these are applicable to general industry. Let's take a look at a few specifics. And I'm going to click through these really quickly because, again, you're going to have access to it. But what you're going to see is some of the specifics. So under HAZCOM, for example, of the 26,000 plus citations issued by federal OSHA in fiscal year 2024, HAZCOM violations represented 12.5% of all total violations. So this is a biggie. You'll see the number one, these are in order on the screen actually. The number one is failure to have a written program. And then we got training issues, safety data sheet issues, and labeling issues pop up with HAZCOM. The second most popular, coming in at 11% of all federal OSHA citations, are related to lockout tagout. Got to have those written procedures, got to do those periodic inspections. Respiratory protection is 11% also, but just shy of where lockout tagout was. If your organization has workers who are required to wear respiratory protection, it's a pretty comprehensive standard. There's a lot to be done, lots of opportunities for things to go wrong. Hang on, Amanda. So Amanda has posted that she just had a lockout tagout client who had a lockout tagout complaint because the procedures were missing some details. So yes, it's not just that you have to have procedures, but they have to be done correctly. Whoopsie, hang on y'all. Just clicked the wrong thing real quick. So the next one, powered industrial trucks, 10% of 2024 violations. Lots going on here too. Number one is that competency training. So remember that for a powered industrial truck operator, there are 3 levels of training, and the ultimate level of training is competency. So they have to prove to you that they can operate that powered industrial truck safely. The last one on our list is machine guarding at 7% of all violations, and abrasive wheels tend to give people a lot of trouble. So that's a very specific detail on this list. One of the ways too, I mean, these are kind of globally the top 10, but one of the ways that you can actually zero in and go, okay, well, what are the most likely types of citations for my specific industry? And I want to show you how to drill down and find that. So on this QR code, again, you'll get these slides, you'll be able to do this. It's going to take you to this page on OSHA's website, and this is an establishment search. Now, the establishment search page, yes, you can type in your company's name or your competitor's name, and you can look at citations that have been issued. That's not what we're going to do right now. What we're going to do is search by NAICS code. So the North American Industrial Classification System is a way of grouping similar types of businesses. So your business has a NAICS code, as does every other business. So if we click on that, now instead of searching by company name, we're going to search by the code that represents your industry. And if you don't know what your NAICS code is, it's easy to find. If you have questions, just reach out to me. But real easy to find. I'm going to use code 313, and this is a textiles manufacturing code. I'm going to not do all states because that can be a little cumbersome. And I'm not going to do North Carolina because I don't want any of y'all's companies to pop up. Let's do Arizona. So we're going to do Arizona, and we're going to find out, it defaults here to the last 5 years from today's date. We're going to see what is happening in this NAICS code. All right. So over the last 5 years in the state of Arizona, there have been these 3 companies. This is piano. It's not how you spell piano, but I don't know how to pronounce this one. So this company had 2 violations on an inspection that was opened July 31st, 2024. And if we click this particular hyperlink, it's going to tell us more. All right. So here we see the company name, address, location, their full NAICS code, because I just did the first 3 digits, 313210, broad woven fabric mill. This type of inspection, remember we talked about the different types, was a referral. Now, we don't know exactly how that happened, but there was a referral made to OSHA. So they were told, you need to take a look at this place. And here's what we have. They received a serious violation. A repeats are ugly. You don't want a repeat violation. A repeat violation. Looks like they didn't contest it, didn't have a informal conference. They just accepted it. All right, when we look down here, this is where it gets there's a little more information. So this is the standard, and they had a repeat violation, 1910.147. Anybody remember what that one is? It's not a test. You don't have to pass it. Right. This is a lockout tagout. So 1910.147, paragraph C, 4, Roman numeral 2, B, and paragraph C, that's procedures. So instead of talking about this, I can show you. So if we click right here, it'll tell you more. Okay, this is paragraph C, 4, 2B. If you click right here, it's going to take you to the standard, and you can look specifically at, and I'll do that just to show you how it works. So 147, paragraph 2, right? I've lost track. All right, what now y'all see, I've lost track of what it was. Paragraph C4. No, how did I lose track of that? C42B, paragraph C42B. So we're going to go down this paragraph A. We're still paragraph A. C. 4. 2. B. So here's what they were cited for. Specific procedural steps for shutting down, isolating, blocking, and securing equipment. So when you are looking at a company's, kind of what they're being cited for, if you're looking within like your own NAICS code, that can be really helpful because it can help you go, oh, here are what similar organizations are finding issues with. All right, number 3, being prepared. Let's take a look at some very basic stuff that you can do that will just help get you on a good foundation. All right, number 1, prepare your people. Prepare your people. And that starts with making sure you're not conveying to your workers that OSHA is the enemy. If you convey to your workers a positive attitude toward OSHA, and you are not conveying to your workers that OSHA is the bad guy, this can actually help your safety program a lot, because culture and attitude is critical. So it starts there. Now, some more specific things you can do: designate the right people. So if you want to identify, maybe it's you, that's the primary contact. If OSHA shows up, you are the primary, but also have a secondary, and make sure whoever it is that you're designating does bring the right attitude to it. You want somebody who's going to be able to work with the compliance officer professionally and confidently, and make sure that there's somebody that feels good about your safety program and knows, kind of all the ins and outs of it. So identify the right people and designate them to be the ones working most directly with OSHA. Number 2, provide training. All right. The objective of any training is to build skills, not teach rules. That's not, you're not training your people on how, on what the rules are, what the standards are. You're training on your people on how to do things the best way, the right way. Now, that also applies in terms of training your people. What if OSHA shows up? So give them some skills on how to talk to a compliance officer, what to expect. Again, you don't want them afraid of the officer. You don't want them nervous. You want them to feel confident when they're speaking to a compliance officer. A way that you can accomplish that is when you are doing your own internal inspections, kind of convey to them, hey, if I was an OSHA compliance officer, I might have some questions for you. So let me ask you a few questions. And the video that we just watched went through some of the questions that the compliance officer might ask. So just role play that and get your people comfortable. Make sure that they're ready to very quickly tell you where the nearest fire extinguisher is, how they would access a safety data sheet, describe the training that they received related to the different safety elements that they've been trained on. Maybe that's how to operate a fork truck. Get them to practice answering those questions. Not only does it prepare them for a compliance visit, it also reinforces to them. And it brings it back, whatever the training that they received was, we're now bringing that back to the surface and helping them remember the details. So as part of your role, do that kind of thing. Very helpful. That second bullet point, a meeting isn't training. I'm going to leave that right there. Just because you have a meeting doesn't mean you trained anybody. The last thing on the slide, that third column, do safety. Do is an action verb. So do safety. Be visible. Do your walkthroughs. Talk with people. If something is brought to your attention related to a safety hazard, make sure you're taking care of it quickly. The second thing, so not only prepare your people, prepare your documentation. Make certain that you feel confident about how to quickly and easily put your finger on any documentation related to your safety program, because your ability to do that really sets the tone with the compliance officer. There's several slides on the types of things that the compliance officer might ask for. So with regard to your documentation, and it looks like there might be a question. Let me double check before I go too far. Yeah, so Rick has put in chat, his suggestion is always be respectful to the inspector, but don't be chit-chatty. So they will be impacted by how they're greeted, how they're treated. Absolutely. So fantastic comment, Rick. Some other documentation that you need to, whoopsie, whoops, goodness gracious. I am clicking on things and getting click happy here. So hold on. This went all the way the wrong direction. Where we were right here. So this is, yes, we know that there are some written programs required. Now, not all of you are required to have all of these written programs, but these are just some examples that might apply to your workplace. I do want to draw your attention to the QR code, the URL at the bottom. This is a link to North Carolina Department of Labor's website, where they provide downloadable templates or examples of some of these written programs. If you feel like you don't have something that you need, that's a great starting point. If you do have something, it's also a great resource for you to download the North Carolina Department of Labor's version and compare it to yours. Like, okay, have I dotted all my I's, crossed all my T's? Do I have everything in order? All right. Some other stuff related to documentation, your training records. Now, different training topics might require different types of documentation. So be clear about what it is you're required to have. The list on the screen is just some examples of some of the things that might be required. Probably the one that throws people a little bit is that certification. There are some OSHA standards that say that the employer must certify the training. And what that typically means is someone from your organization at an administrative level needs to sign off and say, yes, this training was provided. So just be mindful that sometimes a certification is required, and that's not the same as a completion certificate. It's a document saying, yes, the training was provided. All right. Some other stuff that you want to keep documentation on is your equipment records, and there on the screen some examples of records that might be requested during an OSHA audit. And if you are required, based on OSHA standards, to do any of the exposure and health monitoring, that documentation may also be requested during an audit. So it's really critical, honestly, for you to know which standards you have to comply with. And I know some of you, especially my B group, you may not feel like you've got a real good handle on that. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can provide some guidance, give you some resources. If you have questions about, I'm not certain if I have to comply, then we will be glad to help you with that. And then the last category is workplace specific documentation, which you'll see your permitting programs with confined space, hot work. If you use outside contractors, some of the documentation that might be requested here. Strategies and resources. There's not a whole lot for me to offer on top of what I've already covered, because a lot of the resources were included on the slides. But as you know, just kind of a summary. Before anybody ever arrives at your door, know what the hazards of your workplace are and know what standards you have to comply with. Assess your workplace, assess your policies, assess your documentation. Make sure that everything's in order all the time, every day. Fix the easy stuff. So whenever you are aware of things that need to be dealt with, deal with it. If you have a big old long list of things, then tackle the easy ones first. Low cost, high impact, prioritize the rest of the stuff. During an inspection, and this goes back to the comment that was made just a few minutes ago, be nice. Be nice. Provide a workplace or workspace where the compliance officer can comfortably work and look through your documentation and can kind of set up their little workspace. That goes a long way, just simply accommodating them and being nice. Number two, pay attention. So when they're doing the walkthrough, pay attention. What are they looking at? What comments are they making? If you have questions, ask for clarification. The comment that was made in chat was, don't be chit chatty. Yeah, this isn't, we're not talking about the Atlanta Braves. We're not talking about, the weather, but we are talking about how can we do better? What can I do to reduce this hazard? What can I do to better protect workers? Those are conversations that you can have with the compliance officer. And by all means, if you don't understand something that they're talking about, something that they seem to be concerned about, ask the questions. And again, fix the easy stuff. During that walkthrough, if there are things identified and you can easily tend to it, tend to it. It really shows that you're interested in improving and making some improvements in your workplace. After the inspection, now you saw in the video that there will be a closing conference. And that's where they're going to share with you some information, but they can't tell you what your citations or penalties might be. If you are receiving citations, you will get those later. They have a deadline of 6 months. It usually comes sooner than that, but that is their hard deadline. If you haven't heard anything back from them in 6 months, they can't send you anything. You'll have 3 options: pay the penalty, request an informal conference, or contest the citations. If there are citations, always request the informal conference. It's an opportunity where they come back and meet with you and you can talk through what the citations are. You get a little more information. You may be able to shed some new light on it and perhaps get the citations reduced or even dropped. So nothing bad ever comes out of an informal conference, but it may be that you end up with fewer citations or reduced penalties. All right, that is it for what I have, and I went right up to the hour, and I apologize for that. I know some of you may need to scoot and drop off. If you can stay a few minutes, I can stay a few minutes, so that if anyone has questions or comments, I'll be glad to address them. But Susan, is there anything that you needed to offer before people drop off?
Yes, just wanted to thank everyone for attending today. And Holly, thank you for a great presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording, but as Holly said, we do have a few more minutes for questions if you have questions.